So changing the vibe for our next guest. We have to cast our mind back to a different time to where we are now. And I think we're living in a time now in London, and I love London, and I'm hugely passionate about the culture that we've given to the world, which gets forgotten in this Instagram world that we live in, right? And for our next speaker, presenter, we're going to take a journey back to a time in London when things were very different, when things were cooler, in my opinion.
So as a black kid, born in London, raised in London, I grew up in a household immersed in music. Nigerian father, Guyanese mother, music was our thing. My mum and dad met at a party, so of course, music is our thing. And their vinyl collection included Carl Malcolm, Hey Fatty Boom Boom, Boney M, not gonna do it, Isaac Hayes, Miriam Makeba, James Brown, The Supremes, and if you are of a Caribbean persuasion, Jim Reeves. Then came legends like Normski. His name is synonymous with creativity and cultural insight, having documented some of the most pivotal moments in the evolution of music and fashion, from back alleys to grand stages like this one. Normski's deep love of music began as a teenager growing up in London during the birth of the UK's burgeoning hip-hop and rave scenes. His introduction to music photography came almost by accident. He would sneak his camera, cheeky, he would sneak his camera into clubs and events, capturing the energy of the DJs and the dancers around him. He quickly became known not just for photographing artists, but for portraying communities that gave rise to new sounds in the city. Normski's practice is rooted in the belief that photography and music are two sides of the same coin. They're forms of storytelling that capture the heartbeat of urban life. Normski's work is an archive of how sound has shaped the face of London. To see a black face with a British accent on TV back then in the 80s changed my life. Representation matters, especially when outside of your front door of the city that you were born in, you're still a stranger. Tonight, Normski presents Faces of Music, capturing the sounds and soul of the city through a different lens, exploring how the urban environment shapes musical identities. Normski's stories will show you that music isn't just something we hear, it's something we see, shaping our understanding of who we are and where we are. I'd like to invite Normski to the stage. Thank you.
Wow, hello. Hello. Hi. Yeah, before I kick in, I'd just like to say thanks to Jimmy and ADAH and everyone here at Futurist Sound for inviting me up to share a little bit of my my life with music and through my eyes, really. Just before I really kick in, because it's quite a substantial piece of work. I've put a lot of hours and effort into celebrating my own stuff, which I kind of try and do a lot, but this is very special because it wasn't just about the hip-hop stuff, which I'm renowned for, and the street style stuff, which I'm sure, just on a stereotype like vibe, people will look at me and presume quite a lot. I quite like that bit of distraction, doesn't hurt anyone. But yeah, so I took a long time to put this together, and I'm very proud of this. The image at the front of the piece is the cover, and in 1966, when I was born, I didn't really ever think I was going to really be a photographer or even whatever. And by 1978, I was into hobbying, and photography was my hobby. So in 2024, I had no idea I'd have a 272-page book, hardback book of a small amount of my work. So, without further ado, tell you a little story about me and music. Start the film. So, 1966 I was born, Jamaican family, born in London, first generation black kids. There wasn't a lot of music for me at the time, but there was something going on. The music was on the walls, we were very happy kids, my brother, and cassettes was all the rage in the 70s, early 80s. This is me and my friends going to rehearse because we all wanted to be in a band. No such thing as DJs then. I was a drummer. Always wanted to be a drummer. Obsessed with rhythm is in my DNA. Jamaican family, African vibes. Live gigs was all the rage. No such thing as clubs when I was growing up as a teenager. Everything was a venue, and I spent a lot of time going to a lot of venues. I was very lucky with my hobby because the drumming wasn't working out, but gigs were great, so I could see and be in every band. Funk was the rage. Rave hadn't started. Live bands, Bootsy Collins, Funkadelic, Loose Ends from London. These were all influences for me to see artists that I could relate to. This is a moment when we go back to the roots and culture. Camden. My family is Jamaican, but we're very lucky to have been brought up in Camden, where, as you all know, is a central place for music. Dingwalls with the skinheads on a Saturday afternoon wasn't my music. Dingwalls with the hip-hoppers, that was my music, Ultramagnetics. In the early 80s, we didn't have any events for black people, really, but we kind of came together and started some community-based stuff, of which I was very blessed to be part of. Coming from the 60s and 70s, we had the likes of Jar Shaka, Gil Scott Heron, you just saw, the big players in the game, the icons, the idols, Lee Scratch Perry and Mantronics, showing me a connection between hip-hop and reggae music. And of course, Camden, full of new romantics, goths, punks, they were everywhere. So as a photographer, personally, I was in heaven because I just could be part of every scene. Sly and Robbie, Taxi Gang, sound systems at Carnival. It was quite apparent that my people brought bass to this country, and the rhythm and the culture was all over the place. New Cross, Saxon Sound System, Sister Irie, DIY music recording, home studio recording, Smith & Marty in Bristol. This is a big deal. If you couldn't be in a band, you couldn't afford to be a band, but you could produce music if you had the money to get in a studio. It wasn't long though before home studio recording became very popular, and I was very lucky to work in a shop called the London Rock Shop, at which I used to be a T-boy stroke sales assistant. But again, hip-hop was coming. Covent Garden used to be a destitute dump, but we had the street theatre that was a place for us young kids, inner city kids, to express ourselves through music and dance. And that was what was going down. The kind of live stuff, maybe not so much. I found an audience that I could relate to that looked like me. Cookie Crew, the first UK female band, they signed a deal with Beatmasters. So I could see that we had something that was going to become popular. 1986, UK Fresh completely rammed Wembley Arena, and I was there at the front. I had to leave my friends behind, unfortunately, because I was making new friends every time I went out on my camera, and trust me, if you knew me back in the day, I never didn't have a camera on me. And in the introduction, as you were told, I would rudely just pop up to places with my camera and look like a photographer. And that's how I became a photographer. Anyway, the photographs I've got in the background now will show you the selection of vibrations of people I've been lucky enough to work with. Queen Patra, way ahead of Nicki Minaj and all them lot in the dancehall vibe. In the 90s, early 90s, to be fair, DJing was definitely the new thing. nobody really wanted to be in a band as much, but everyone was staring at the DJ. And obviously, music, dance, and expression is what it's all about. This is me getting a bit creative because I was expressing my music through my art. Always at the front, ultramagnetic MCs. There was a crowd of black kids, there was a crowd of multicultural kids, and we were ready for it. It was all about hip-hop. And that's where my main archive really took off. The days of dreaming and smoking pot on Primrose Hill of the Sky piano and seeing Stevie Wonder live weren't going away, but, you know, Robert Palmer, Luther Vandross, all these super iconic names that I shot were becoming a bit of a distant future. And then even old cameo Larry Blackman with the old cod piece, Word Up. Those days were going, but the indie scene with the UK bands and the UK eyes was picking up. Major record companies could see there was a change, and it was all about the indie scene, and that's what we were part of, the street. Even the days of rock bands that looked like Rastafarianism, this was happening all over London and England. And for me, to travel to America, to take photographs and bump into Soul to Soul, who at that time were #1 in England and in the Billboard charts. Having people like Chuck D coming to see my North London mates in New York, that a couple of years previously we were taking photographs for their catalogue, was epic. Some of the greatest jazz musicians in the UK in the middle of a jungle rave, jamming to the beats, using their vocal dexterity to vibe up the girls. Clubs was a big deal now. Artistic crews like 23 Skidoo turned into Ronin Inc. Suddenly I'm on television introducing some of the biggest acts in the world, Run DMC, Live and Dance Energy. So through my camera, I was able to be part of the new movement, which we're actually at now, the end of what this was starting. Public Enemy came to the UK, and for a lot of black brothers and sisters over here, and white brothers and sisters, they brought a lot of us together. This is in Manchester, and there's moments like this which the integration between different cultures was happening as I was living. So I'm very blessed to have been around at this special time, and I know a lot of people who hadn't found their way into what they were going to do through, I believe, hip-hop and reggae and soul and funk. The music that is the voice for everyone, we're able to come together and find out maybe a new scene or make new friends and go to different places. Derek B, the great Derek B. I was very blessed. I went out to LA to take photographs of NWA. The gangster rapper me didn't work, but De La Soul, Flower Power, and the peaceful culture vibe was all over the place. This is the back alley shot that Ada mentioned. Also, the DJ thing was not just in the UK. Detroit, all over the world, people were starting to play records of those acts that I'd photographed, which were no longer on so much, but now we're getting DJs playing music, which is samples of old-fashioned music, and the whole thing's going crazy, but you know what? It was such a big deal that we now know the multi-trillion-pound industry that the music comes from now all started back in those days with bands like Run DMC that were getting major deals and shutting it down in the headlights. Who would have thought? LL Cool J, Hammersmith Palais, Public Enemy's first ever gig. I was at the front with my little trusty OM5, OM1, OM3, Olympus 35mm. This is one of my favorite photographs of two old school DJs, and this is LL Cool J. DJ was such a big deal that even he got on the decks, even though we know he's an actor now. So this is a little moment or two here where we just go through a bit of a montage of some of my pictures of the power of the microphone, the power of conscious words, and the power of expressing yourself and making as much noise as possible. I'm moving around the stage because I can't see anybody and I'm trying to avoid the smoke. Oh, there you are. Yes, have a look from this side. So Terminator X, now the iconic superstar, is no longer a singer or a songwriter. He's now a DJ or a producer. And in Detroit, I went to Detroit in 1987, and that was the beginning of my real introduction to electronic music. which is where you don't even need a band. You can have the whole band in a box. And that's Warren Atkins, who invented the phrase techno music out in Detroit in 1987, maybe 86. And that's the pioneers of techno music as we now know it today. So bass is in the place. Everyone's going crazy for it. And you can turn this music up now. And we're forgetting about the old rock stars because we've now got Goldie's drum and bass gone platinum. DJs are now superstar DJs. And people like Dr. Dre have turned into music industry moguls. And God bless Barry White, the foundations of our ancestors, the great Motown singers, and this incredible singer, Tina Turner, that I was very blessed to take a train when I was 19 years old on my own to Munich and get in the front row and be the only photographer to have a look up her skirt. Oi, oi! Sorry, I was going to keep it clean, but all of these new school Beyoncés and all that lot, this is where they get that DNA from, the original iconic stars and wonderful Whitney. So I've been very blessed to just make sure I got the super icons that I've worked with into the mix, because it's very important to remember that you don't die when you go, you leave your legacy, and the music that these people have produced will take me back to my roots of love of jazz. When I first went to see Miles Davis, I was a very bad photographer and I had a very small lens. This is, don't laugh. That's my style. Big lens means you're too far away. Small lens, you need to get all into it. And I've always been all amongst it, feet on floor, hopefully at the front. I'm very proud of that moment because not many people will be able to say they've seen the greats of Miles Davis or even bumped into Bjork in a drum and bass night in the middle of Hoxton. And again, that's the power of music, walking along the canal as I used to do as a kid, hearing a trumpet. I was always inspired by the sound of music. Everything I've done has had a rhythm. I've made a lot of friends. The stage is my place. This is the first time I've been on the stage for a while, not the last. And you know, today we now have a new star. The rave scene, young people, wear what you like, do what you like. Stay in the venue and stare at the lights. No more stars on stage, I'm afraid. DJs are now got the whole band at the end of one knob. Bass, treble, orchestra, cut! We've got superstar producers of the underground. Even Carl Craig from Detroit is working with classical bands now. The whole thing's gone full circle. So this is the point in the talk where I just say to you, well, what goes around comes around. My work has gone around so much that it's also landed on record sleeves. Some of the most important records of our time I've been blessed to have touched. This bit could get a little bit boring because I'm actually showing off now, having my photograph of Public Enemy used. I only took the picture of the band. I had no idea that they would use it for a release. And again, if it wasn't for the music that I was interested in, I would never have got the opportunities to have my photographs celebrated in various magazines and lots of covers. And it's very important to realise that when I was growing up, when you looked at records with my mates, you used to read the sleeve notes while you were listening to the record. You used to look at the style, you used to look at the design. It's a very important part of it. And sometimes, to be honest, if the record cover didn't look any good, it really affected the sound of the music. So as you said earlier on, they are on the same side of the coin. I sort of hear what I see and I kind of see what I hear. It's a strange thing I have. But I'm very proud to have been able to be part of this time of our lives, which is probably the most powerful time to ever been alive, when you transcend from the old school traditional music values to the new school traditional music values, which is really the same thing. It's just sound and how we use it and how it is manipulated and how we enjoy it and also how we celebrate it. And some of the things I've seen on this screen today have really, this is, if you turn this one up, this is the vocal that I think that music deserves. Respect. It's the most important thing. The most important beat you'll ever hear is your own heartbeat. So I'd just like to say, I'm not finished yet, but I never thought I'd be on the stage here at Ali Pali, one of the boys. All these years later, got a little bit of work in Vogue, and I'm really proud to say that it's been an honor to share a very quick journey into my life of music through my photography. This book is available, you can buy it now. It's not here, but it's online. My name's Normski, man with the golden shutter, and I really hope you enjoyed my presentation.